welcome. You're watching News Now on News Central Television. I am Judith TV. It's time for us to bring you news just beyond the continent, and we begin by telling you that a ship reportedly carrying humanitarian aid to Gaza has been struck by drones overnight in the Mediterranean Sea off the coast of Malta, setting the vessel ablaze and causing it to take on water. According to the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, the 1,000-ton vessel Conscience sent out a distress signal in the early hours of Friday after it was targeted by drones while sailing in international waters roughly 16 miles from Malta's coast. The coalition stated that the aid mission had been carried out under a media blackout in a bid to reduce what it described as the risk of Israeli sabotage, though no evidence was provided to support the claim. In a press release, the group said all communication with the vessel had been lost following the attack. Meanwhile, the Director General of the World Health Organization has described the situation in Gaza as catastrophic, with 2 million people now facing severe hunger. Speaking at a press conference in Geneva on Friday, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus highlighted the WHO's unprecedented funding crisis as donor nations continue to slash contributions. He called it the most serious disruption in the organization's financial history. Meanwhile, Executive Director of the WHO's Health Emergencies Program, Dr. Michael Ryan, warned that the minds and bodies of Gaza's children are being broken. He accused donor countries of complacency through inaction, saying the humanitarian situation has become unbearable. Dr. Ryan added that current levels of malnutrition are so severe that children's immune systems are collapsing. Joining us for more on this, we have global affairs analyst Ejike Okpa. He joins us live from Dallas, Texas. Mr. Okpa, many thanks for doing this with us. Let's just get started. Israel is being blamed for this attack, even if no one has brought any evidence. Is the blame game the first consideration, or should we be looking at a criminal investigation?
I mean, all of the above. Thank you for having me. When things like this happen, you're always going to look to the next, whoever your enemy is, and blame them. So hopefully, we'll get to where we decide who actually did this. If it was a humanitarian thing, which is, food and clothing and medicine, for people who need it, and then Israel attacked it, I think that should warrant a criminal investigation and a criminal referral. But, it's too early in the game. We don't know who did it, and hopefully we'll find out in a matter of days.
The trouble with Gaza is that there is now a hunger crisis. How should the world deal with this?
Well, anytime people have to go, without food, should be a concern for every human being, regardless of, what is going on. Because these are usually the vulnerable members of the population, and the children, the elderly, and women. And so the world should be concerned. The world should make the efforts to make sure that food, gets to the people that need it. In this case, people in Gaza who, as we know, this war has dragged on. Israel has stuck its ground, and the Hamas people have stuck its ground, and we don't seem to have a solution, a pathway to peace. And this is very unfortunate. Like I've said in previous interviews, this shouldn't be happening in the 21st century. I don't know what the fight is for. But, anytime a life is lost, it doesn't have to be two. Anytime a life is lost that could have been prevented, it's very sad. It tells the story of, bad leadership globally. And we should get to the table and resolve this sort of conflict.
It is curious that since the old ceasefire agreement expired, world leaders seem not to have shown sufficient interest in bringing about an enduring peace agreement. What's to blame, or who is to blame for this?
Everyone has a blame here, but the most blame has to go to the Israelis, and as well as the Hamas and the Palestinians. Because there are other things happening in the world. The rest of the world don't have to live and go by the conflict between two neighbors. Love thy neighbor, the golden rule. Find a way to live peacefully. But if they don't, then, people are going to have to do a scale of preference. Should we be bogged down with what is going on now or other things? I mean, again, you look at what is going on between Congo and Rwanda, and there are so many trouble spots in the world. So the Israeli-Hamas one is one of them. It's just because when the media put their lens on it, it gets more attention. But then, there's going to be a shift. And that shift is what is making it look like nobody's paying attention. But people are paying attention. But the attention cannot be more than the people that are suffering the brunt of this conflict, and that is the Israelis as well as the Palestinians. So they have to come to the table. They have to find what it is we're fighting for. What is it that we can give up? Because again, you have to give up something in order to get something. What is that sacrifice? It seems like nobody wants to make a sacrifice, and you can't blame the world. If two neighbors are fighting, why are you dragging the entire neighborhood into it? You guys find a way to resolve your conflict.
Let's also look at Washington's position. What could possibly be done, even if on a humanitarian level, and if you like, moral grounds, to help the suffering in Gaza?
Well, since Trump came in, Trump has had his own share of, things going either way. In many ways, we have the tariff issues. We have, what the previous administration did. It's only one man. It's only one president. He gets 24 hours in a day, just like everybody else. He needs to get some rest in order to focus on what it is he's going to do. But, so what can Washington do? If you send the food and the food don't get to the people that deserve it, then what is the problem? So it comes down to the human factor. It's always the human factor that causes some of this conflict. The Israeli people are doing what they're doing to protect themselves. The Hamas are saying, hey, this is our thing. We got to fight. We got to fight whatever we have. Again, at some point, it's what are you willing to give up? What are the Israelis willing to give up, and what are the Palestinians willing to give up? If they don't give up something, this conflict will go on forever. And there's nothing Washington can do. Washington can take sides. Washington can give arm to one side and put to the other side, and that's just the nature of life. You got to go where your interest is best represented. And in this case, the Israeli-U.S. Relationship seems to be tight. There's nothing anybody can do to weaken that, and that's why the Israelis are able to do what they do. You look at them; it's a tiny country in the midst of huge regional country, and they are still able to withstand them. So a human factor. Again, a human factor.
The human factor, I mean, the warning from the WHO is saying that it's a hunger strike, and also bringing to fore that these children who are the crosshairs of this conflict, their minds are broken, their well-being is broken, and they are malnutritioned or at the risk of being malnutritioned. Again, the human factor, how long are we going to keep pointing at human factor and start to ask or demand for action?
But again, that's what I'm saying. The World Health Organization will say what they say, or the UN will say what they say. The UN is a weak, toothless bulldog, organization. They don't have the military. And then if, in fact, Israel said we don't want a peacekeeping force of UN in that territory. So again, when I say human factor, I said, the gun don't fire itself until human being pulls that trigger. Nothing else happens until the human being decide to do it for the good or for the bad. So, when we talk about all these world organizations, we have found that a whole lot of them are dependent of American support, financial support. And when America pulls that financial support, they get weak. And what do? They resort to just making statements that at the end of the day don't do anything or get anything done. That's why I said, when husband and wife are fighting, you guys have to come to terms. What is this you're fighting for, and how do you want to resolve it? Anytime you inject a third party into a conflict, it takes a bigger scope than, what would have normally been a smaller thing. So as long as you have been alive, I have been alive, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been on since 1948. Do that math. And everybody's come up, this is the solution, it's a two-party solution, it's this solution, but none of them has ever worked because the human factor still is resolved. The children of today, no matter what the psychological impact is on them, are still going to be the adult of tomorrow. And sometimes that scar of a family member getting killed or getting wounded, pops up when they're adult and they just want to seek a revenge. And that's what you see. It's not because, people haven't died and people don't know that people have died. It's just that they get angry and they say, how come this happened to my family member? How come I don't have a parents? Nobody raised me. I became, a product of orphanage, a product of refugee. So those are the things, not just the war ending. It is also what continues, what lingers after the war has ended. And that is something the psychologists and the philosophers and all kinds of people that tend to study human nature have been unable to find the solution for.
Well, we do hope that they find a solution as soon as possible. Ejike Okbar, he is a public affairs analyst, international public affairs analyst, joined me from Dallas, Texas, to give us a bit of insight following calls from the WHO. Switch gears now to Syria, where Syrians on Friday held a demonstration in Kibon on the outskirts of Damascus to protest a recent wave of Israeli strikes and to denounce foreign intervention in their war-torn country. Israel said it carried out an airstrike near Syria's presidential palace in Damascus on Friday, warning the country's new Islamist rulers against targeting the Druze minority. The dawn strike came hours after senior Druze clerics and armed factions reaffirmed their loyalty to Damascus and rejected any call for succession. They also urged the authorities to appoint local officials to official posts in Swaita province stronghold.
بنرفض التدخل الخارجي وبنرفض أي طائفة أو أي جهة بسوريا تدخل طرف خارجي. نحن سوريين بقلب بعض بنحل مشاكلنا. التدخل الإسرائيلي غلط ونحن ضده وضد أي تدخل إسرائيلي.
اليوم نحن نظمنا هي الوقفة الاحتجاجية أولاً تنديداً للقصف الإسرائيلي اللي حاول يستهدف الرئيس السوري اللي هو بيمثل الشعب السوري كامل. هذا القصف الإسرائيلي هو اللي عماله يقوي ويشجع فكرة تقسيم سوريا.
Meanwhile, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has condemned the Israeli airstrike near the presidential palace in Damascus, Syria. Guterres, in a statement by UN spokesman Stephan Dujarric, called the attack on a violation of Syria's sovereignty, which he said Israel must respect along with its, quote, its unity, its territorial integrity, and its independence, end quote. Now, this comes after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz called the incident a clear message to Syria's new rulers.
He also condemns Israel's violation of Syria's sovereignty, including the latest airstrikes near the presidential palace in Damascus. It is essential that these attacks stop and that Israel respects Syria's sovereignty, its unity, its territorial integrity, and its independence.
And now to election matters. One of the 11 contenders for Romania's presidency in Saturday's first round of elections has vowed to, quote, put Romania first, end quote, with analysts already predicting an extremely tight race for the runoff. A former leftist prime minister who quit as prime minister in 2015 after a deadly nightclub fire now says he backs what he calls radical change taking place in the United States. He said he would support increasing Romanian defense spending to over 3% of economic output in 2026, while denouncing the introduction of civil unions for same-sex couples.
Eu sunt cel mai atacat de sistemul actual, care vrea să rămână la putere. Eu sunt hotărât să mă lupt cu acest sistem, să-l înving cu ajutorul românilor și să facem schimbarea de care este nevoie. Eu cred că prin unitate și prin adevăr, prin competență, putem să ieșim din această criză.
Let's go on a short break, shall we? When we return, there's more, and this time we head off to South Korea. But first, that break, stay with us. You're welcome back. We'll continue with elections, but this time in Southeast Asia. South Korea's former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo on Friday joined the race for president in a snap election triggered by the impeachment of the ex-president Yoon Suk-yeol. The June 3rd vote will decide who replaces impeached former president Yoon Suk-yeol, who was removed from office over his ill-fated declaration of martial law in December that sunk South Korea into prolonged political turmoil. Political instability in the country intensified on Thursday after a retrial was ordered for a presidential frontrunner over alleged election law violations, and as two key government figures, including Han, resigned. Han had hinted at a possible presidential bid when he resigned as acting president and prime minister on Thursday, suggesting that he was willing to, quote, take on a greater responsibility, end quote.
저는 이번 대통령 선거를 통해 우리 국민의 선택을 받도록 전력을 다하겠습니다. 임기 첫날 대통령 직속 개헌 지원 기구를 만들어 개헌 성공에 총력을 기울이겠습니다. 취임 첫 해에 개헌안을 마련하고 2년 차에 개헌을 완료하고 3년 차에 새로운 헌법에 따라 총선과 대선을 실시한 뒤 곧바로 직을 내려놓겠습니다. 개헌의 구체적인 내용은 국회와 국민들이 치열하게 토론해 결정하시되 저는 견제와 균형, 즉 분권이라는 핵심 방향만 제시하겠습니다. 사회 모든 분야에서 국민 통합과 약자 동행이 이루어지도록 혼신의 힘을 다하겠습니다. 저는 철학과 소신을 가지고 국정을 운영하되 각각의 부처는 그 부처를 맡은 분께 맡기고 대통령은 대통령이 해야 할 일에 몰두하겠습니다. 오직 국리 민복을 위해 일하고 또
Still on elections in Asia, Islamists in Bangladesh are gearing up to make political gains after being crushed for years by the government that was overthrown in a mass uprising last year. The coalition will hold a mass rally in the capital, Dhaka, on Saturday in what is expected to be one of their biggest public shows of strength for years as religiously fueled activism gains popularity. Mohammed Ake, who leads the group, says they will push to implement Sharia or Islamic law and believes the group's network of tens of thousands of seminaries will ensure they achieve a major showing at the poll.
যে ব্যবস্থার নাম হলো খিলাফা ব্যবস্থা, সেটাই আমাদের রাজনৈতিক দর্শন। যেরকম বর্তমান বাংলাদেশের রাজনৈতিক একটা দর্শন, এক একটা দল নিজস্ব হোল্ড করে, কেউ গণতন্ত্রকে, কেউ সমাজতন্ত্রকে। আমরা খিলাফত ব্যবস্থাকে আমাদের রাজনৈতিক দর্শন হিসেবে আমরা হোল্ড করি এবং সেটাই আমরা বাস্তবায়নের জন্য আমরা চেষ্টা করছি। অবশ্যই আল্লাহর আইন প্রযোজ্য হবে, শরিয়ার আইন সকলের জন্য, সব ধর্মাবলম্বীদের জন্য কল্যাণকর, যে কল্যাণমূলক রাষ্ট্র সেটাই হবে। তারা যেটা বলেছে এবং সেখানে তাদের যে মন্তব্য, যে মন্তব্যকে হাইলাইট করেছে প্রধান উপদেষ্টার কার্যালয় থেকে, সেটা হলো যে বর্তমান বাংলাদেশে ধর্মীয় উত্তরাধিকার আইন এবং পারিবারিক আইন নারী পুরুষের মধ্যে বিরাজমান বৈষম্যের কারণ। অর্থাৎ ধর্মীয় ব্যবস্থাগুলো এই দুইটা জায়গায়, উত্তরাধিকার আইনে এবং পারিবারিক আইনের ক্ষেত্রে ধর্মীয় বিধান কার্যকর থাকার কারণেই নারী পুরুষের মধ্যে বৈষম্য তৈরি হয়েছে। তো আমরা মনে করি যে এই দুটো বিষয়কে যদি উৎখাত করা হয়, একটা পরিবারের পূর্ণ ব্যবস্থাপনাটা একটা চেইনের মতো। এই চেইনের একটা বিষয়কে, দুটো বিষয়কে এখান থেকে সরানো সম্ভব না। আমরা ব্লাসফেমি আইনের কথা বলছি না। আপনি সুনির্দিষ্ট কয়েকটা জায়গায় কথা বলবেন না। আপনি কথা বললে আপনি জেনে শুনে কথা বলবেন, আপনি আঘাত করে কেন কথা বলবেন?
On Friday, accused Indian intelligence and military agencies of directly orchestrating terrorist attacks on its soil, warning of a firm response if that became necessary. Pakistan's Chief of Army Staff, General Saeed Asim Munir. He convened a rare Special Corps Commanders Conference at the military's general headquarters in Rawalpindi to review what the army described as a deteriorating regional security environment. The meeting followed a spike in cross-border tensions and heated rhetoric between the nuclear-armed neighbors triggered by the deadly April 22nd attack in the Indian tourist town of Pahalgam, which India has blamed on militants operating from Pakistan. Pakistan's military leadership vowed to defend the country with a resolve to uphold the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country. And now to the U.S., where Secretary of State Marco Rubio has warned the Islamic Republic of Iran to walk away from all nuclear enrichment and ballistic missile programs, in a major public hardline that comes in the face of negotiations between Washington and Tehran. Now, Rubio said in an interview on Fox that there can be no long-lasting deal between the U.S. and Iran if Tehran is unwilling to give up several initiatives. He went on to suggest that Iran could import enriched uranium, so it could not have to abandon its domestic commercial nuclear industry completely. Now, he added that the U.S. must be allowed to inspect Iranian nuclear and military facilities regularly. Iran has long said its nuclear enrichment program is for civilian and commercial uses and not for a nuclear weapon. Still in the U.S.'s President Donald Trump has petitioned the Supreme Court to revoke legal protections for 350,000 Venezuelans as part of his broader plan for mass deportations. The request follows a ruling by a federal judge in San Francisco extending the temporary protected status for Venezuelans, which has been set to expire in April. TPS, created by Congress in 1990, was designed to prevent deportations to countries experiencing armed conflict or natural disasters. Explaining his decision, District Judge Edward Chan said removing the protections would disrupt thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of lives and result in billions of dollars in lost economic output. And finally on the news, the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, has said he wants reconciliation with the rest of the royal family after a legal challenge over his security that has left him devastated. He told the BBC in California that his father, King Charles, quote, won't speak to me because of this security stuff, end quote, adding that he did not know how long his father had left to leave. He also admitted that there had been so many disagreements between him and his family, but stated that he had forgiven them. And that's all we can take from beyond the continent. Now, do remember they can send us your eyewitness reporter, the WhatsApp number now showing on the screen. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on social media. We're at News Central TV on all social media platforms. You can always watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422. We're now on GoTV. Find us on channel 23. We're also on Avo TV. You can also find us on Star Times channel 274. You can also stream us live on YouTube as well. Many thanks for watching. I am Judith at TV. Good night.